It starts like a cliché with a bad aftertaste. Suburban sunrise, crisp lawns, and tension so quiet it hums like a lie. A shiny U-Haul pulls up in a gated community just outside Atlanta, and out steps the Ellis family. Reggie, in his button-down confidence, and Naomi, rocking her principal face, even on a Saturday. They've just signed papers on their forever home, a two-story colonial with the kind of porch that screams stability. But 14 minutes after they step out, they're greeted not by cookies or curious neighbors, but flashing lights and a cop car easing up like it's got something to prove. Across the street, behind a curtain, pulled tighter than her worldview, Margaret Linwood clutches her phone like a rosary voice, still echoing from her call to 911. Suspicious people are breaking in. Reggie is lifting boxes marked Books, Naomi's, cradling a slow cooker, and little Maya's pulling her pink unicorn backpack from the back seat like she's done nothing but dream of this exact moment. Margaret doesn't see that she sees black skin and boxes, and decides it must be a crime. The first officer, badge gleaming and jaw clenched, steps out like he's walking into a scene from a TV show where the black family's always a plot twist. Got a call about a break-in, he says, eyes scanning Reggie like he's scanning for a lie. Reggie lifts his head slowly, calm but tight-lipped, already building that invisible armor every black man in America wears by default. Naomi steps forward, voice like velvet dipped in steel. "We live here." The officer chuckles like that's the punchline, and for one hot second time stalls. The second cop is younger, nervous eyes darting like he's waiting for something to pop off. "Do you have ID?" he asks Reggie, who sighs. Not because it's hard to show ID, but because it's insulting that he has to. What Margaret didn't realize, sipping her lukewarm coffee and watching like she's still got slave patrol in her bones, is that this ain't the Ellis's first rodeo. Reggie's been reading contracts longer than these boys have had facial hair. Naomi runs a whole school, and Maya just wants her teddy bear in a juice box, but this cul-de-sac has rules unspoken but loud. The kind that let white folks smile to your face while dialing 911 with the other hand. The kind that dress racism up in concern. When the cops ask to see proof of ownership, Reggie pulls out a folder thick with receipts, deed signatures, because, of course, he came prepared. 3 days ago, he says, "We closed. Want to see the title company's number?" The younger officer falters, but the older one doubles down. "Still need to check it out," he says like power is a muscle. He hasn't worked enough. Naomi crosses her arms and lifts one brow, the way black women do when the math isn't mathing and the patience is running on fumes. That's when the neighbor, 2 doors down, a Latina woman in leggings and a messy bun, walks over, holding banana bread. "Hey, y'all need help unpacking," she says brightly, glaring at the cops with just enough side-eye to slice. "They bought that house. I watched the moving truck come in." The cops pause. Tension thick enough to chew. Reggie doesn't say, "Thank you." Naomi doesn't blink. Maya tugs on her mom's sleeve, whispering, "Mommy, are the police mad at us?" And that question, simple, scared, too damn common, hangs in the air longer than it should. See, this neighborhood thought it was getting a story. It could control what it got, was a match, striking against old wood. Because what's about to unfold in this cul-de-sac isn't just a case of mistaken identity, it's a takedown, a slow-burning reckoning. And baby Margaret's about to learn that you don't poke at a legacy and expect it not to push back. The cop car didn't roll in slow. It slid in like it owned the whole damn street. Confidence wrapped in sirens and entitlement. Officers Daniels and Reese step out like they're showing up to a crime scene they've already solved in their heads. Smug smiles, hands near holsters. The kind of energy that says, "We're not here to ask questions. We're here to assume." Naomi's on the porch with Malik, 12 years old, arms full of history books and comics when the yelling starts, hands where I can see him. Daniel shouts like he's in a war zone instead of a suburb, where the HOA gets more attention than the school board. Malik freezes eyes wide, the box slipping from his hands and crashing to the porch like it caught the fear too. Inside the garage, Reggie's working with a power drill, trying to mount shelves before the heat hits triple digits. He hears the chaos, steps out, drill still in hand. Sweat on his brow, and boom, Reese has his gun out like it's muscle memory. Drop the weapon. Reggie blinks. Takes one slow step forward. Voice low, calm. Measured like every seminar HR ever held lives in his bloodstream. It's a drill, he says. I live here. But cops like Reese don't hear words, they hear challenge. And challenge makes them itch to prove a point. Naomi's got her phone out now, shaking, but steady, recording everything with the kind of instinct you only develop after years of being told to just comply. Malik's backed against the screen door, shoulders tight, watching his dad get forced to the ground like a suspect on a bad episode of Cops. No questions, no warnings, no names asked. Reese slaps cuffs on Reggie's wrists with the kind of casual cruelty that doesn't realize it's being filmed. Stop resisting, he spits, even though Reggie hasn't moved an inch. Naomi's voice cuts through the air, sharp and cracking. That's my husband. He's not resisting. Daniels throws her a look like he's deciding whether to escalate, his hand twitching near his belt. Malik shouts, "You can't do that to my dad." And Daniels takes a half step forward before remembering this is being documented. And the last thing he wants is another viral video. And then, like divine timing wrapped in black leather and government clearance, a dark, unmarked sedan pulls up. Out steps Deshaun Ellis, cousin blood badge. Not just a detective, but Georgia Bureau of Investigation certified. Tall, unbothered, and not here to play games. His eyes clock everything in 2 seconds flat. The cuffs, the drawn weapon, the shaky hands of a black boy watching his father pinned to their own grass. "Put the guns away," Deshaun says, voice low and dangerous, badge flashing on his chest like a warning flare. Reese turns confused, then defensive. "This doesn't concern you," he mutters. Deshaun doesn't blink. "That man," he says, pointing straight at Reggie, "is my cousin. That house is his. And you're about 3 seconds from losing your job if you don't uncuff him right now." Silence falls hard. Naomi keeps filming. Malik's mouth hangs open. Daniels stammers, "We got a report," but Deshaun cuts him off with a look that could file charges on its own. "You got a call. You didn't get a reason, and now you're out here harassing homeowners because someone across the street doesn't like their new view." Reese hesitates but eventually fumbles for the cuffs, unlocking them with hands that suddenly feel very exposed. Reggie stands rubbing his wrists, meeting Deshaun's gaze with a mix of gratitude and pain he's had to swallow his whole life. "Thanks," he says, voice tight. Deshaun nods, then turns to the cops. "You better log this call real clean, because if there's one scratch on his record from today, I'll dig so deep into your files. Your grandkids will need legal counsel." The cops back off slowly, clumsily, and retreat to their squad car with none of the confidence. They arrived with Naomi, lowers her phone. Malik runs to hug his dad. And Deshaun, he just stands there, arms crossed, jaw tight, staring at the house across the street. Margaret Linwood watches from behind her curtain, her hand still hovering near the phone. But this time she doesn't dial, because now she knows the Ellis family isn't just moving in, they're flipping the whole script. Deshaun doesn't yell, doesn't flex, doesn't even move fast. He just steps forward, smooth and deliberate, like a man who knows exactly how much weight his badge carries. "Take the cuffs off my cousin." "Now," he says, voice quiet like a warning before a storm. Reese lets out a half laugh, more nervous than amused. "And you are?" It's cute, like a Rottweiler trying to bark down a freight train. Deshaun pulls his credentials from his jacket. Georgia Bureau of Investigation, full authority, and a look that says, "Ask me again, I dare you." The pause that follows isn't long, but it's loud. Daniels shoots a glance at Reese, like he's suddenly remembering they're not on top of the food chain anymore. Naomi's still recording arm, steady, like it's second nature. Malik hasn't moved from Reggie's side, holding his dad's hand, like it's his anchor. Reggie, still not saying a word, just locks eyes with Deshaun, a silent conversation decades deep in family history and hurt. The kind of stare that says, "Thank you, and also, this ain't new." Daniels clears his throat, shifts his stance and mutters something low to Reese, who finally reluctantly pulls the key. The cuffs pop open with a click that feels more like a confession than a release. Reggie rolls his shoulders back slowly, like he's trying to shake off not just the metal, but everything it means. Deshaun steps closer, shielding his cousin now. Not because Reggie's weak, but because power protects power when it knows where it belongs. And that's the part these cops never planned for. Naomi lowers the phone just enough to hit upload. The footage is already flying through Wi-Fi. Cloudbound, time-stamped, and unerasable. But what Daniels and Reese don't know, what Margaret Linwood across the street doesn't know, what the whole damn neighborhood definitely doesn't know, is where that video's going. See, Naomi didn't just record it for the memories. She texted it to a woman named Tasha Whitmore, her old roommate from Spelman, now a civil rights attorney with a burner phone. A federal fire in her chest and a client list. CNN keeps on speed dial. Tasha saw the clip and sent back one word: say less. Reese starts mumbling about protocol, about how it's been a long week, and Deshaun just shakes his head slowly, like he's watching a rerun of a show he's tired of pretending is fiction. You came out here with your minds made up, he says, calm, but slicing. Didn't ask names, didn't ask questions, just assumed. Just like the last time and the time before that. Daniels opens his mouth like he wants to argue, but the words don't come. Probably stuck behind years of bad habits and worse training. Malik looks up at Deshaun. Are they gonna come back? Deshaun kneels eye to eye with the kid. They might, he says honestly, but next time they won't catch us by surprise. Naomi's already checking her email, Tasha replied again. Give me 24 hours. I've got producers calling. Margaret peeks out from her curtain, sees Reggie standing tall again, sees Deshaun's badge glinting in the sunlight, and decides maybe today's not the day to bake that banana bread after all. The cops retreat. Awkward and pale, radios chirping with static as they walk backwards like they're afraid to turn their backs. Deshaun doesn't move until the cruiser disappears around the corner. Then he exhales, not in relief but in preparation, because this was just the preview. Across the country, phones are already lighting up. A black man cuffed on his own lawn, a black woman recording a black detective stepping in, and a system that just got caught red-handed again. You know it's about to get real when the Homeowners Association starts talking like they run Homeland Security. The next morning, a letter slides into the Ellis family's mailbox, crisp and passive-aggressive, like it got ironed before delivery. We've received concerns about increased foot traffic and unusual activity. Translation: too many black folks on one lawn, and Margaret Linwood's trigger finger is still itchy from that phone call. Naomi reads it twice, scoffs once, then puts it on the fridge like a trophy of microaggressions. See, the same HOA that checks mailbox paint codes with CIA-level scrutiny suddenly forgot how they approved the Ellis family in the first place. Approved their application, smiled at the paperwork, cashed the checks, and still somehow decided they were a problem before the last moving box even hit the living room. Reggie wants to let it go. He's tired. But Naomi, nah, she's not built to back off, especially not when the neighborhood is throwing shade with paperwork instead of apologies. And then the clip starts to spread. It doesn't just go viral, it erupts. Twitter picks it up. Instagram slaps it on every story with a hashtag living, while black tag. Local news grabs it by noon. National by 5. Tasha, the civil rights attorney, does an interview on MSNBC, looking straight into the camera like it's a dare. Why was a black man cuffed in his own front yard while his son watched? The internet starts doing what it does best, connecting dots that were never meant to be connected. So Naomi does what women like her always do when the system pokes them too hard. She starts pulling threads. The HOA board, all white, 5 members, 3 of whom live in the same row as Margaret Linwood, 2 of whom have never even spoken to Reggie or Naomi, the president. Stephen R. Kane, fancy name, fancier history. Turns out he was once a cop, quietly let go from the neighboring precinct under early retirement. The reason: excessive force complaint that never saw trial. The officer who backed him up in the internal report, Travis Reese. Yeah, that Reese. Naomi's eyes don't widen, they sharpen. She calls Deshaun. We got something, she says. He's already driving. When he shows up, he brings printouts, HR records, redacted files, public record searches that don't feel public. Until you know how to look, it's all there. Reese and Kane go back years. They trained together, drank together, probably built half their careers by protecting each other's dirt. This isn't just a nosy neighbor calling the cops. This is a setup, a system, a network of exclusion dressed up in newsletters and annual dues. Naomi stares at the HOA letter again, rereads the phrase, community standards, and suddenly the words don't sound suburban. They sound surgical. Like this place wasn't meant to feel safe. It was meant to feel controlled and not for them. Meanwhile, Margaret Linwood keeps walking her dog at exactly 7:45 a.m. face. Pinched eyes forward, like she's trying to manifest invisibility. But now, every neighbor who watched that video is wondering, did Margaret really feel unsafe? Or did she just feel challenged? Challenged by a family that didn't wait for permission to belong. Deshaun runs his fingers along the edge of the HOA rules binder, the one Naomi borrowed from the community center. This ain't about regulations, he mutters. It's about territory. Reggie finally speaks, voice low but steady. They're not ready for what's coming. Naomi smiles, but it's the kind of smile that comes right before you knock the whole table over. Then we better bring chairs for everybody. Because if this neighborhood wants to play games, they just picked the wrong damn family. They didn't show up looking for sympathy. They showed up with facts. Naomi and Reggie stood behind the podium outside City Hall, in crisp neutrals and steel resolve, calm in the kind of way that makes liars nervous. The press was already circling like bloodhounds, mics, out cameras on hashtags. Ready to catch fire, Naomi spoke first. She didn't yell, didn't cry, just laid it out like a syllabus you couldn't argue with. Deed to the house. Check timeline of events. Check footage of Reggie being cuffed on his own lawn while his son watched. Played in full. Then came the receipts, a stack of 911 transcripts, all with the same tone. White neighbors concerned about unknown individuals moving in. Over 5 years, 14 calls, 11 families of color. Only 3 ever made it to move-in day. The others, they got spooked during escrow. Some just disappeared. One filed a complaint. Naomi pulled that one up specifically, but it had been dismissed due to lack of supporting evidence. Problem was the complainant said she submitted video footage, and her lawyer confirmed it was received. That footage, gone. Like the truth got erased with a sticky note and a smug smile. Tasha, Naomi's friend now lawyer, of record stepped forward. Next. Hair pulled back, eyes blazing. We are filing a federal civil rights lawsuit, she announced. Against the HOA, against officers. Daniels and Reese, against Margaret Linwood. She let it hang like thunder in a silent room. This isn't a misunderstanding, it's a pattern. And patterns have consequences. The mayor's office issued us no comment within the hour, but the city started sweating. Then Deshaun got a package. No return address. Handwritten. No fingerprints. Inside minutes from a secret HOA board meeting, typed, dated, and damning. Alongside it a list of names the board had declined for community fit. Some were redlined with vague notes, like excessive occupancy risk or possible political activity. But others were underlined and flagged by first names alone. Jamal Tyrell, Ayesha Maria, and some of those names Deshaun recognized them. One was a judge's daughter. One worked at the state capitol. Another ran a local nonprofit that fought food deserts. These weren't just families looking for nice schools and quiet streets. They were connected, and every single one had been politely declined. The deeper Deshaun and Naomi dug, the more the HOA stopped looking like a bunch of lawn snobs and started looking like a gatekeeping cartel. Wrapped in khaki and flagpoles, Kane, the HOA president, hadn't just retired early from the force. He'd bounced right before an internal affairs investigation hit the papers. Reese. He testified in a case 3 years back where a black family's house was mysteriously vandalized the night after they toured it. That case closed. No suspects. And guess who filed the initial report? Yeah, him. The Ellis family sat at their dining table that night. The same table they'd dreamed about during apartment nights, and rent hikes and realtor tours that felt like auditions. Reggie looked at the files. Naomi looked at the list. Malik sat between them, headphones on, pretending not to notice, but old enough to understand. This ain't about us anymore, Reggie said, voice low. Naomi nodded. It never was. Because what they thought was a misunderstanding, a neighbor with bias, a couple bad cops, it was policy. And now, that policy had faces, names, receipts, and a reckoning on the horizon. It started with a phone call and a knock. Now it's a national headline and a movement. By the time the Ellis family steps onto a daytime talk show, set studio, lights hot, smiles, practiced but real, the narrative has flipped entirely. It's no longer just about an unfortunate misunderstanding. It's about what happens when a system tells you to your face that ownership doesn't mean belonging. Naomi sits tall in the center chair, elegance wrapped in steel, telling millions about HOAs that weaponize paperwork and neighbors who use 911 like a security gate. She doesn't rant. She doesn't preach. She breaks it down. How the pattern starts before you even unpack. How you get approved on paper, then policed on pavement. How a smile from a neighbor can feel like surveillance if you've lived through enough coincidences. The crowd is dead silent, then erupts. And just like that, Naomi Ellis becomes the voice for housing equity in America. Back home, Reggie returns to his law firm. He doesn't change suits, just missions. He still writes contracts, still negotiates deals. But now he also leads a pro bono task force, investigating property discrimination, HOA policies, lending biases, rezoning trickery that targets black families without ever saying it out loud. He doesn't need applause. He just wants receipts and justice that sticks. And Malik writes, his 7th grade teacher asked them to write about a time they felt misunderstood. He turns in a 5-page essay titled, What It Means to Be Watched. It talks about his dad on the lawn, his mom holding her phone, like armor. The way Daniels looked at him like he was older, bigger, threatening. It talks about the silence afterward, and the cameras, the clicks, the whispers. He wins a statewide student journalism award. At the ceremony, he thanks my mom, my dad, and the neighbor who called the cops, because now I know my story matters. As for Margaret Linwood, she resigns from the HOA. No press release, no apology, just a short statement delivered through a lawyer. Stepping down to preserve the integrity of the community, but integrity already left the group chat. A video montage goes viral, split-screen footage of Reggie being cuffed and Margaret peeking through her curtain like the ghost of 1950. It's not loud. There's no yelling, just a soft piano track underneath the words, "This is how it happens." The video racks up millions of views. The whisper becomes a scream. News anchors stop saying alleged profiling and start saying documented discrimination. HOA boards across the country get flooded with public records requests. Naomi is invited to testify at a state housing committee hearing. And Reggie gets invited to speak at a law school, his old one, where he was once one of the only black students in the room. And back on that quiet cul-de-sac with the symmetrical lawns and decorative mailboxes, something changes. The Ellis family throws a block party, not out of pettiness, not out of spite, out of joy, out of resistance, out of the kind of radical normalcy that says, we are here and we're done shrinking. Naomi makes jerk chicken. Reggie's got the grill going. Malik sets up the playlist. Neighbors come, not all, but enough. The music's loud, the laughter's louder, and every invitation had the same line printed at the bottom, bold and unbothered. We're not moving, but this neighborhood is